coming up.
Why did you become a feminist, or how did that happen to you?
So I just moved to Los Angeles to be in the film industry, and I was pretty young, I was naive, I was 18 years old, in a new town, didn't know anyone in town, and I noticed that all the roles that I was going out on auditions for were sexy girl number 7, or the girl that gets killed in the first 10 minutes of the film. Yeah. And so I've died about 8 times in movies. I have a great scream. And so I was annoyed with the stereotyped casting I was getting, and so I started to complain about, is this because I'm a woman and how I'm being treated, and also being hit on by producers. And so when I would voice my rant to my friends and family about being a woman, they would say, oh, it sounds like you're a feminist. So I looked it up, and it said feminism is the belief in gender equality, and I thought, sign me up. And that was about over 10 years ago.
Welcome to the Fallen State. I'm Jesse Lee Peterson. I am excited about this discussion, as I am with all, but especially this one, because it's about men and families. I have with me Jaye, an award-winning documentary filmmaker. Her newest film is called The Red Pill. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
The documentary was deep. It really showed what was really going on with men and children, and the mother of the children as well. But I was surprised when you talked on the film about being a feminist, and how this whole film changed that for you. Why did you become a feminist, or how did that happen to you?
So I just moved to Los Angeles to be in the film industry, and I was pretty young, I was naive, I was 18 years old, in a new town, didn't know anyone in town, and I noticed that all the roles that I was going out on auditions for were sexy girl number 7, or the girl that gets killed in the first 10 minutes of the film. Yeah. And so I've died about 8 times in movies. I have a great scream. And so I was annoyed with the stereotyped casting I was getting, and so I started to complain about, is this because I'm a woman and how I'm being treated, and also being hit on by producers. And so when I would voice my rant to my friends and family about being a woman, they would say, oh, it sounds like you're a feminist. So I looked it up, and it said feminism is the belief in gender equality, and I thought, sign me up. And that was about over 10 years ago. So.
And so what was it like living as a feminist?
Well, it was also kind of the rise of social media at that time. And I think social media really influenced and kind of fed more into my feminist ways, because I was reading articles online about how women were being mistreated. And at the time when I started calling myself a feminist, a lot of my friends turned their nose up to the idea and the word. But now, since then, a lot of my friends who were previously didn't like that I was feminist now are feminists.
Did you get to the point where you hated men while being a feminist?
At the time I didn't realize it, but now looking back with what I know now after making the red pill, I think I easily male bashed without realizing it. Yeah. And was dismissive of their issues and just thought it's their privilege, they have nothing to complain about. So I think in that way it was a kind of hidden male bashing.
Explain to the folks, what is the red pill? Why did you name it that?
It's a cultural slogan. It comes from the movie The Matrix. Yeah. And within the movie, this character Morpheus tells the lead character Neo that Neo is asleep. He's going out in this world with this kind of ignorant bliss. And Morpheus says, I will show you the truth. If you take the red pill, I will show you the harsh reality of the world we live in, and you're not going to like it, but it's reality. And so that's where the red pill cultural slogan comes from, is the Matrix. But the men's rights movement started using the red pill term to describe their seeing the light about gender issues, and that it's not all black and white.
The men's rights movement, what is their primary purpose? Do you know now that you've gone through this? What is the primary focus?
What I would say their primary focus is trying to bring balance to a very unbalanced gender discussion because of feminism. Yeah. And a lot of mainstream media will attack the men's rights activists as being misogynistic, they're a hate group, they hate women, or they hate feminists, which they do have a lot of criticisms about feminism. They don't hate women. I did not find MRAs, men's rights activists, to outright hate women. A lot of them are in relationships and have kids. loving relationships. But they do have criticisms about feminism because it's dominating the gender dialogue today.
I noticed that with the men group, they call them hate groups. But do they call the feminist groups hate group as well, or just the men?
Just the men's rights movement has been labeled a hate group, but not accurately.
Right.
It's been misreported a lot in the media that they were named a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which they were not. The Southern Poverty Law Center has been critical of the men's rights movement and wrote an article saying that they're on our watch list, but they never outright labeled them a hate group.
Yeah, I was on their list at one time.
Oh.
Yeah, they called me a hate group. Dr. Michael Kimmel, of whom I had on my radio show, said that if domestic violence comes from men and women, then it's not a gender issue. What did you get from that?
When I interviewed him, he said that men are not being abused in equal numbers, that women are being abused by men. But my research showed otherwise, that it's almost equal, very close. And but Michael Kimmel did mention in my film, and we showed in the film, that he says if it were equal numbers, then it wouldn't be a gender issue. It'd just be a societal issue like hunger. It's genderless. But currently with feminism, there is this idea that only, or a vast majority of women are being abused by men, but even the CDC reports that it's very close to almost the same amount of men that are abused.
What's interesting about women violence toward men is that there are passed laws where men are not allowed to even defend themselves. You know, so the woman just go nuts, beating him up, and, you know, and he can't defend himself because he will end up in jail.
Yes.
I mean, even if he said, no, stop, he would go to jail because they would call that verbal violence or something like that.
Yeah, and women do have, I guess it's a privilege, but I would say it's using the system for bad rather than good, but they have the privilege to call the cops, say they are feeling threatened by a man, and the cops will take the man to jail. And a man does not have that same ability.
I was assaulted several times, you know, and I never got any help. I went to the police still bleeding a couple of times. And one police officer said, I'll never forget this. He said, if she starts hitting you again, you better get out of there fast, because if she just breaks a fingernail trying to hit you, we'll arrest you.
In the film, you talked about a guy who had tried to get his son, I believe, maybe daughter, but son, and he ran out of money, so he shot himself in the head. He went up into the mountain, and he killed himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was like awful.
Yeah, and it happens all too often.
Yeah, a lot of men go through that. Over the last 26 years, I've worked with men who have gone through divorces or unfortunately had children out of wedlock. I know of a case right now where this man and woman broke up. They had a little child. The woman, they went to court, and he had 50-50. And she started threatening him to accuse him of sexual molestation whenever he would get with his daughter. So even though he had the right to see his daughter, he don't bother with seeing them at all now because of that. Are you hearing about any of that kind of stuff happening?
Yeah, false accusations is a real issue, and that's one thing that feminists try to downplay, like, oh, it's 1%, but it's not, because false accusations don't always go to court, so it's not always on the books, but women can hold that over a man's head and falsely accuse him of, one of the fathers that I interviewed, he was falsely accused of child pornography for taking a photo of his son with, it was a Mr. Potato Head, the little pieces, like the ears and hands and all that, it was on his face. And he was like 4 years old, but he took a photo of his son with the Mr. Potato Head pieces on him. And his ex-wife took the photo to the police and said, this is child pornography. But the biggest problem with false accusations is that there's no accountability for women or people who make false accusations, and that's the problem.
Why is it like that? I mean, why hasn't it just gone one-sided like that?
I think it's because we have lived in a culture for so long that we believe we need to protect women, and that a lot of people don't think, or even when I started making the red pill, I didn't think, what woman would just falsely accuse a guy of beating her if he didn't, or raping her? I just thought that that's insane that anyone would do that, because I wouldn't do that.
Right.
But there are people using the system for their benefit. Because sexual assault mostly does happen to women and it's hard to prove, then I think as a society we're wanting to believe her word over his.
While producing this movie, you also gave us an opportunity to just see the impact that it was having on you, on your life. And we see you going through these changes. That was a very good idea to do that. What were you feeling? I mean, what were you thinking, and how was it impacting you?
So my video diaries have always been for private use, and I kept a video diary log throughout making the red pill. In total, when I filmed the red pill over a year, I had 38 diaries that I filmed, and I think about 5 make it in the film.
Yeah.
But it does chronicle, and it shows in the film, my evolution.
Yeah.
This film was probably the biggest change in my life I've ever gone through, and for the better, and it really affected my relationship with my boyfriend and my father figures and my male friends, and also made me feel more empowered as a woman, strangely enough.
Wow, affected you in what way?
Realizing that men aren't privileged over women and oppress women as a whole. Because I started to ask myself while I was making the red pill, I would ask myself if I had the choice to switch places with my boyfriend, for instance, who was the breadwinner, and he would get up at 4:30 a.m. and work 12, 14-hour days and pay most of the bills, would I want to switch roles with him? And the answer was no. And I realized, well, I guess I'm actually the privileged one in this relationship.
So have you been attacked for this film?
Yes.
You have, and give us examples.
Well, it started early when I started making this film. A lot of my friends and family who were feminists were angry that I was making a film about men's rights activists, and they would say, why are you giving them a platform to speak, which is such an insane thing because most people don't even know what MRAs have to say, so why are you saying they can't speak?
Yes.
But I didn't let that deter me from continuing on, but I did lose a few friends. And then when I had a budget to make this film, I started approaching different companies to contribute sound services and animation, and so many very peculiar things happen that I've never seen happen on a dozen other films that I've directed, where they would be along for being a part of the project, and at the 11th hour they would drop out and give a reason that didn't make sense. And we actually had the Village Voice, a major paper in New York, refused to run our what would have been a paid-for advertisement, and my PR team has never seen that in their decades of being in this industry. And so we just had all these things happening that I've never seen. There were companies I worked with in the past that refused to work on this film. And so there was that kind of discrimination happening just based on the subject matter. And my film, I believe, is very balanced. And I think most people that will see it will agree it's balanced. It's not propaganda.
Not at all.
So it's just having the discussion is they're wanting to silence that, just the discussion or the idea of this topic of men's issues. And then in the media, having my reputation smeared, having the film outright lies about the film to discredit the film or me, so people won't see it. And we are doing the Oscar qualifying process, and so some of these mainstream media sources that are writing our film reviews, I think maybe are trying to sway the vote to not like the film or watch the film.
You know what I noticed about your film, like with those organizations, some of the organizations you interview, I have a nonprofit where I work with men, and what I try to do is to show men how to forgive, don't resent, don't hate, always operate from love. And love is not like a feeling. Love is just not hating, and when you don't hate, you have natural love that causes you and help you to overcome anything. Some of the organizations seem to be operating from hate. They've gone through a lot, now they're angry about that. And so it's weakening them rather than allowing them to go forth with power. Did you notice anything like that? The anger or anything?
I think men's rights activists feel beaten down, and then it does come out in anger or rage, sadness, hopelessness. Suicide rate is 78%. Men of all suicides are men. Right,
that was shocking to me. That, what was it, 75% you said?
78% worldwide of all suicides are men.
That is amazing. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I unfortunately had a son out of wedlock when I was 18 years old, and he came here to live with me in LA. He was 5, so he stayed here, and really happy guy, loved being with his father. and his mother went to New York, got married, and one summer she said, "Oh, can you let him come visit just for the summer? I promise not to keep him." And I was like, no, I'm not going to take that risk. And she's like, please, please, please. So I took the risk and I let him go visit, and she kept him. And so I had to get a lawyer. I went through the whole thing. She lied and said she had changed his last name. And we found out years that that wasn't true. And I have to tell you, I don't think the world understands the pain that a father feels when he loses his children. And I can imagine it must be tough for a mother too. But when someone just take your kids away from you or your child, it's really, really painful. And I was thinking about that watching your movie. I hope that the world can see that men love their children too, and they should not just be taken away from the fathers. What do you want from this film? What do you want people to know? What do you want to come out of this film?
I think first and foremost, I want this to start more discussions about men's issues and also allow people to open up about their own personal stories and hopefully also elicit compassion and from other people and allow people who do have this wall up to hear about men's issues to free their mind from whatever is creating that wall and to be able to listen and have compassion for men. And if they don't have compassion for men's issues, then they should look within inside themselves and ask themselves why. And that's what I did while making The Red Pill. Was there were so many times I heard men's issues and I kept on thinking, well, what about women? And I kept making it about my feminist beliefs. And it took so many years before I started to question that. Why am I unwilling to hear men's issues and have compassion for them?
Have you changed in the hearts of women who hated men prior to this? Now they see what's going on?
Yeah, and I have some very close friends and family members who are very upset about me making this movie. And because I made this film over 3.5 years, it's a very long journey, and we kept having discussions over those years, and just slowly, it wasn't an easy process even for me to change, but I saw them changing as well, and some feminists that I interviewed in the film changing. And now that they've seen the film, they really have had just had their eyes opened.
I thought it was interesting how this one mother tried to get her son to make him fat by overfeeding him. That's the darndest thing I ever heard of.
Yeah.
You're going to kill your son just to get back at the father. Yeah. Were you shocked by that?
I was, and I was really nervous to put that story in the film because of fat shaming and that whole, dialogue right now. And the story isn't about, if people should be fat or healthy or whatever, but the story shows that the courts supported a woman who was abusive to the child and gave her primary custody, and the father, who was a very good father and cared about his son's health, had his parental rights taken away. There's no other explanation except for gender bias in the courts.
That's amazing, huh? Mm-hmm. I'm glad to see men rising up and stopping this because the kids are, along with women like you, because the kids are suffering. The worst thing that can happen to a child, whether male or female, is to be turned away from their fathers. Because when you're turned away from your father, it leaves a void inside of you. Yeah. What did your brother and father think about the movie?
Well, I only have sisters. I have 3 sisters, so a lot of estrogen in the house.
Oh, your boyfriend. Okay,
yeah, boyfriends and father. My boyfriend has been overwhelmingly supportive. He was my executive producer, meaning he financed a lot of the movie. And he was also my cinematographer, so we're a filmmaking team. And we've had a lot of discussions about these issues since starting the film. And he also started as a feminist as well.
As a feminist?
As a feminist. He grew up in Berkeley. And
your boyfriend was a feminist?
Yeah.
Just as a side note, why would a woman be interested in a man who called himself a feminist?
Well, I think there's what they're trying to brand feminism as, which is the movement for gender equality, and the reason why, spoiler alert, at the end of the film I dropped the label of feminist. Yes. The reason for that is because I see that they don't include men's issues in the discussion and go as far to silence them. And so that's why I dropped the label, but I'm obviously still for women's rights, and now I care about men's issues as well. But I believe in also looking at the tactics of movements and not just what they say their definition is, but how they implement that around them.
What can we do to help you get this out to the world? The people who are watching, who will watch this, and all of us.
Yeah, well, go to theredpillmovie.com, and we are going to be doing screenings worldwide. It's a grassroots effort right now. Just fans and followers of the film are hosting their own screenings all over the world. So if you go to our website, you can see where there's a screening. And very soon we're going to be available worldwide online and all digital platforms and DVD, iTunes, Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, all the rest. So the film will be available far and wide, and I hope as many people see it as possible.
Do you know why men are so hated? Men are the most hated creatures on earth today. They would rather have an animal before they love a man. Why is that? And not just feminists, but it seems to be popular in the country today.
I think it's an interesting phenomenon that a lot of women are, and it's not like they're lesbians either, it's just there are a lot of women who say they don't need a man and I can do it all, and say that it's empowering to not need a man and do it all. And I understand that. I mean, I have friends that are doing that as well, and I think, you know, each person's circumstance is different, but I would like to see children raised with a father in the home or a male figure, and some kind of male role model that's male teachers as well, coaches. That connection is so important to see what a good man looks like. And as far as the hatred of men, I think it has a lot to do with the feminist rhetoric and this idea that women are victims, they're oppressed by men, and men have all the power, and therefore we need to take away power from men to uplift women. And so it's almost like female empowerment in feminist eyes is to actually indirectly step over men in the process to lift up women.
Again, I want everybody to see the movie because it's really, really insightful. I know men, and some women too, but especially men who are adults, and because they have not been raised up by their fathers, they are mentally affected by it. A lot of guys can't get up and go to work anymore. They're relying on women to take care of them, or, you know, they're living at home with their mothers until they're 50 or 60 years old. And all that is due to the lack of a good father. Because if you don't have that while growing up, you don't have an example to look at to see how to follow.
Yeah. And I would also like to add that a lot of feminists will say, yes, fatherlessness is a huge problem in our society, but they will blame men as deadbeat dads, that they weren't involved. But what I learned throughout making the Red Pill is that there are so many fathers that want to be involved, in the courts and the exes in their lives are disallowing them to be involved in this parental alienation, and that 81% of all primary custody is to the mother. And so there are a lot of dads that want to be involved, and they're being pushed out.
Yeah, I saw this happen to the black community about 50 or 60 years ago when they started to take the man out of the home and the government became the daddy of the family. Corrupt leaders became the head of the people. It just went downhill. I mean, men became weaker, they became emotional, and now you have a warfare going on between the black man and the black woman, which has nothing to do with racism, by the way. It is the destruction of the home. The woman doesn't have the father there to help raise the children. She's angry about that. And she's passing that anger down to the children, you know, because kids are innocent when they first come into the world, but they come into this crazy family where fathers and mothers are not there or not getting along. It changes their nature. And we just now have a mess in the black community. And they're blaming it on racism, but it has nothing to do with that. It's all about not having that father there. And they don't want to admit it.
Wow.
And so all the destruction that you see is coming from not having a father there and the anger of the mothers. And then the fathers who try, as you said, they try to be with their kids. They pay the money, but they can't see the kids because the mother fights against that even after the court tell them to do it.
Yeah, I know I've heard a lot of women wanting to keep custody for the child support payments.
Why don't society understand the family issue? Why have we forgotten about how important that is?
I don't think they've forgotten it. I think they benefit from the chaos and the money in court and family court the money and child support payments. I think broken families growing up and kids having issues, there are a lot of industries that benefit from that. So they all have an investment in keeping it broken. You know?
That's true. Well, I really appreciate your work. Thank you so much for what you're doing, and thanks for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Did you have fun?
I did.
Were you nervous?
I was.
You were?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And why were you nervous?
I saw your other videos and I didn't know if, I don't know, we would debate about politics or whatnot, and I was scared.
This documentary is too important to put anything else in. I want everybody and their mama to see this.
Thank you.
It really, because we've been dealing with this stuff for 26 years, and it's nice to see someone put it on film and really show what's going on. So I do appreciate it. I was easy on you today because of that.
Thank you. Thank you.